Antec has absolutely been killing it with all of their cases over the last few years, and their brand new Performance 1M is no exception to that rule. They've decided to take this a bit of a different way by building a platform and giving us the promise of expandability in the future. What does that mean? Well, let's take a look at the Performance 1M in its current form. To get into the Performance 1M, the top panel does need to be removed. There's no other way around it. And basically you want to pull on the tab that you can see on the back edge of the case. The interesting thing about this tab is it's made from what I can tell is seatbelt material, and I'm really digging this red color here. Now, to remove the side panels, there's notches on the edge of each of the side panels, and you want to put your finger behind them, then you can pop that away and tilt it and then lift the panel away from the case. Both sides of the case are exactly the same to remove the side panels, so to remove the other side, rinse and repeat the same process as removing the other side panel. Taking a closer look at the side panel, you can see that it's a mesh design side panel. It is a solid panel, so it's not fabric or anything like that, and there's no filters on the side panel. However, removing the bottom panel, which is similar to removing the side panels, you basically just want to pop that and then lift that away from the case. Taking a closer look at the design, you can see that it is a solid piece of billet metal for each of the feet with rubber anti-slip pads. The Performance 1 only has a single dust filter, and that is on the bottom of the case. It is attached through the pegs on the bottom of the case to hold it into place. The Performance 1M supports both SFX and SFX-L power supplies. The bracket to mount the power supply is completely removable. There's two screws that hold this bracket into place. And as you can see here, the power supply does mount to this bracket. You can do it in a few different orientations. However, there are two offsets that you can change between either SFX or SFX-L power supplies. There's a standard extension cable inside of the case, and there is a power connector on the back bottom left of the case if you're looking at it from the back. For storage, there's a single drive sled on the inside front panel of the case. It's removable with a thumb screw, and the drive mounts via a set of Velcro straps that are pre-installed. Again, one 2.5-inch drive in total. The Antec Performance 1 is a sandwich layout case, which means the spine of the case is fully adjustable here. I'm going to run through how all of this works so you guys can get a better understanding, but there's adjustable screws on the top and the bottom of the case, and the screws can be moved to either side of the spine depending on what kind of offset you're looking at using with this case. This makes the spine highly adjustable in lots of different layouts and offsets. So just breaking this down so you guys can understand, the maximum CPU cooler height layout, you've got a maximum height of 85 millimeters and a maximum GPU thickness of about 40 millimeters. For maximum GPU thickness layouts, you're looking at a maximum cooler height of 47 millimeters and a maximum GPU of 78 millimeters, with a maximum combined combo for both the CPU and GPU height of 125 millimeters. I hope that all made sense. What all of that means is there's a happy medium between having the right CPU cooler height and the right GPU offset, depending on the hardware that you choose for your system. As you will see in the thermal results a little bit later in the video, that can really dictate whether or not you've got the correct cooler for your CPU and the correct thickness for your GPU, depending on your hardware. It's also worth mentioning at this point that the layout of the case can be flipped because you can put the top panel on the bottom and the bottom panel on the top. I really hope this is making sense to you guys because it can be quite confusing, especially for those who've never built a small form factor PC in a sandwich layout small form factor case before. On the other side of all of that is GPU support with the physical length of the card as well. Now, the maximum GPU length is 350 millimeters on paper. The GPU that you're seeing here is a 357 millimeter GPU, and it fits with no issues whatsoever. There's also an integrated PCIe Gen 4 riser cable to plug your GPU in. For fan support, only 2 fans are supported in total, and they're on the bottom of the case. It supports 2 120mm fans or 2 140mm fans. I installed a 120 and a 140 just to give you guys a bit of an idea of what that would look like. For motherboard support, this case will only support mini ITX motherboards, and that is all. That's what it's really designed for. As mentioned in the intro, there will be options available for the case, like at the moment they're looking at doing this TG side panel as well as this combined TG and mesh side panel. These won't be releasing until sometime next year, but it gives you an idea of what Antec is planning. As for case wiring and I/O, there's a USB Type-C cable and a front panel connector for the power button. Physically on the front panel, all you've got is a power button and a USB Type-C port, and this is a 10 gigabit USB Type-C port. Look, I know there is a lot to digest with the Antec Performance 1M, but let's do a build so you guys can get a bit of an idea of what it's like to build in the case, and then I'll talk about the thermals because it does get quite interesting. Before we dive into thermals, there's a couple of things I want to address. First of all, the 4090 in this build, the thermals are great, and there's no reason for them not to be great. One thing I wasn't sure about was the thermals for the CPU for the 9800X3D, because I've never tested this CPU with such a small cooler. So, looking at thermals, what we're seeing here is we're hitting a thermal throttle limit. So with the fan orientation on the cooler set to intake, we're getting a bit higher temperatures here with about 13% CPU throttling, which is not ideal. If we flip that fan over and set it to exhaust, we're getting a bit less. We're getting about 8% CPU throttling with lower average temperatures over 1 hour. However, if we swap the CPU out to a 7600 with this cooler, you can see what the deal is here. The thermals are much better and much more manageable. And to be honest, if you're gaming at 4K with a system like this, which is kind of what you would build this for, I would say the thermals are excellent for that. But be aware that when we run thermal testing on the channel here, it is the worst case scenario. It's almost never going to be utilized that way unless you're doing something completely insane. But again, I wanted to know what the story was with using the 9800X3D with such a tiny cooler, because I haven't done it yet. With saying all that, I think there are a couple things to take away from the thermals here. I did try setting the bottom fans to exhaust and it made the GPU temperatures considerably worse, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. The thermals are fine if you manage your expectations with this case, right? And that's kind of the thing with small form factor. People have all of these expectations of what a case should and shouldn't do in a small form factor, but I've got a couple things to say about that. But if you're interested in any of the hardware, There is a PC part picker list down below. You can peruse that list and see what it all is. But back to what I think about the Performance 1M from a design standpoint. Aesthetically, it's gorgeous. Almost nothing looks like this. It's all billet aluminium throughout. The whole frame is billet aluminium, and it is some of the most premium case materials you'll ever see. With saying that, there are quite a few design limitations. With it being the size that it is, I would think that maybe they could have figured out how to allow you to install a radiator here. But as I said in the intro of the video, Antec has promised to build this out as a platform. So they're saying, you know what, in a couple months we might release a top to make it a bit higher, to put a radiator at the top. We might add additional cooling. We might add different bits for the frame. As I showed in the video, we've got a TG side panel and the half TG side panel with the mesh intake side of that as well. So they're not just saying we're thinking about doing it, like they're going to be doing it, which is why they included those panels to show some of the ideas of stuff that they're working on. With saying that, those panels will be available next year at some point in time. Not sure, they don't even know yet, but yeah, I thought it was worth mentioning because sometimes when we get cases for review, case vendors will send extra stuff that may or may not be with the case when you buy it, and I know that those aren't coming with the case. Right. When Antec was finalizing the designs of this case, they asked me a couple questions. They asked if I thought there should be more than one USB port on the front, especially USB-C, or a USB Type-A port. They asked if there should be a power light, and I said, make it as simple as possible. One USB-C port is fine, and a power button is fine. It didn't need anything more than that. Chances are, they'll offer a different front panel option. Back to the design. I know I'm rambling a little bit. This is not the smallest small form factor case. Like I said, it is absolutely gorgeous, but the fact that it's the length that it is, and it doesn't allow you to do 3 120mm fans is a little bit strange. It's only about maybe 10mm from the bottom from allowing that. So let's just say, for instance, Antec made this case 15mm longer. We would have been able to do a third fan at the bottom. We don't need radiator support on the bottom. Let's be real here. We just don't need that. But 3 120mm fans would have made the thermals, I think it would have made it quite a bit different. But you know, it is what it is, and they have promised to allow some expandability, so maybe they'll find a way to make it slightly bigger. Ultimately, if Antec can deliver on the promise of expandability with this case, I can see this being a very compelling platform, as in one of those platforms that you invest in and you keep building on over time. You know, when I talk about rack mount cases, how I'm like, you know, you buy this rack mount case and you're gonna have it for like 5 to 10 years. That's kind of what I feel like they can do if they do this right. But right now, it's a little bit too early to say, and the price might say everything from the jump, because this is a very expensive premium case, basically because of the way it's constructed and the materials used. If you're interested in the Antec Performance 1M, it's starting at $249 US. Now, the small form factor folks out there, they know what to expect with small form factor cases, especially premium material cases, and they will tell you that that is not an unreasonable price. But I would say that for the compatibility right now, there are better options out there. With saying that, the closest comparison to this case to any other case on the market in terms of compatibility and cooler support and power supply support and everything is probably the Fractal Terra, and I like this more than the Fractal Terra because it's much easier to build in. There's a little bit more space for everything to fit, and it's really not a struggle to put things in the case. So for the people in the comments who will probably compare this to the Fractal Terra, this is better than the Terra. Hands down, better than the Terra.